It is just after 2 o'clock. Bring the work session to order on the bond proposals for the municipality and the school district. We have present, or do we still have on the phone Mr. Weddleton and Mr. Constant? We'll see if they come back around. They may have had their phones on mute. But Mr. Trainey.
I'm here.
He certainly is.
Pete Peterson.
Yeah, Ms. Quinn Davidson was here, and I think we'll be right back. I'm Eric Croft, and also Mr. Dunbar and Mr. Rivera have been previously excused. They're unable to make it.
Alex Slipka, Chief Fiscal Officer.
Dyson.
Yes, true.
Dean Basis.
That is who we have at our head table, and we're here to talk about, have a presentation on. Are you going to walk us through? Do you have a PowerPoint, Mr. Slipka?
I have Lance Wilbur's PowerPoint,
so
I'll be channeling Mr. Wilbur, who is at a retreat today.
Yeah, he's at the Budget Advisory Commission retreat. Great. Well, then why don't you tell us about the bond proposals that we'll be voting on soon?
Okay, thank you very much. And there are copies of this coming down, so I apologize. Still new at the job, not knowing what I'm supposed to do or not do. But what we're going to walk through is on the agenda for the 29th, we have 6 bond propositions, so we're going to walk through some of the highlights. We have staff from PM&E, Parks, and others in the back if you have very specific questions about their projects. And so we'll go through it. Of course, if you have any questions, please raise your hand.
I was just wondering if we should figure out some lighting situations for us older people.
Oh, you can.
Well, are you going to be putting the projects?
No, so you could turn the lights on. Yeah, this is okay. Yeah, no big deal.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so this is specifically only the municipalities' general obligation bonds. At some point, you're going to hear from the school district on their bond proposition. These were all previously discussed when you went through the budgeting process in 2018. There are 6 very specific items to be voted on that are listed here. And you have the details are in the AO and the AM. This is just some background on the scale of what we're doing. So $55 million this year, as you can see. In years past, if you convert past year bonds to current dollars, we're actually not raising as much money in current dollars as we have in years past. And the amount of bonding per resident has actually been going down over the years. Yes?
To some extent, both the school district and then the municipality, and we've been joined by Ms. Quinn Davidson, have had this idea, not a rule, but somewhat of an idea that they want to put bonds that approximate the debt that's being retired. My concern with that continues to be the declining debt here. While that can be a good thing, it can also mean you're not maybe keeping up with your capital obligations, and simply repaying what you did 20 years ago has you on a at least flat, but probably declining with inflation. And then every once in a while, 1 or 2 of the bonds will fail. So we really are not keeping up with the amount that at least we thought proper 20 years ago. What is there a guideline for how much total bond we put on each year, or is it just a political decision?
I would say it's a political decision. The information that's represented here is actually interest rates, not relative bond outstanding. So specifically the chart on the lower right, that's just lower rates. And this is really, the message here is that rates are low. If you were, as an entity, to make the decision that we have a lot of things that need to be upgraded, we want to raise more debt to do that. In the scheme of things, historically, now is a better time than obviously 30 years ago.
That's good. That's the interest rate. But I have seen charts of bonding per, here is your bonding per resident,
right,
going way down, or per assessed valuation in Anchorage. Okay. Any other questions on this? Yeah, Mr. Trainer.
Don't forget, we gave them that $50,000 property tax exemption. So that's going to reduce the amount of property taxes paid by the individual homeowner because the commercial property doesn't receive that.
Yeah, unless you're a very wealthy homeowner, unless it's a really mansion.
Well, up on the hillside, I don't worry about it on the flat land.
Okay. Good, Mr. Slivka.
So this is just a recap of the things that have been done in the past. If you have any specific questions, but just pictures of before and after, this is just a reminder of why we do what we do. So there's some projects there, some of the other stuff that we've done, storm drains, traffic calming, pedestrian work. So again, when we get to the bond package, what are we doing? $55 million. As you can see, this second bullet, this is the total amount of general obligation debt outstanding. And this gets to a question about how much debt we should have relative to the municipality as a whole. So you can see over the past several years, it's kind of been slowly declining a little bit. We maintain a AAA rating with S&P. And the other, of course, the thing that comes into play is that the state's engagement has been lessening, and so we find that the municipality ends up having to do more work. Yes, sir.
Mr. Silva, what will be our total debt if this is approved? Because we always get asked by the citizens, what's the total debt of the city of Bankers?
So that 412 number is the number that you're going to see on the 12/31/2018. That's the total net geo debt. Now, again, Anchorage only. The school district has...
They got their own, I know.
Right. So...
So 400 how much?
412 is what you're going to see this year. I believe the number that retired is going to be 37 million. So 18. So it'll be 430 by the end of 2019.
Thank you, sir.
And then, so these are some of the things again that you discussed in more detail that are detailed in the memorandum, but work that's going to be done to improve roads, downtown lighting. There's going to be some traffic circulation work done. We're going to do some storm drains, some pedestrian safety, parks, and you can see what's attached to here. These are the amounts in question. So the road bonds is $32 million, and so there's obviously lots of stuff to do there. Parks is about $4 million, and you'll see we're doing stuff both at Cuddy, Russian Jack, and Elderberry. And then public safety, $18 million. And then
I noticed there was, or it seemed like there were two public safeties, a public safety transit and a public safety police. Right?
So very specifically, and yes, this slide actually incorporates 4 of the 6 bond propositions.
Okay.
So you got public safety and transit and those various projects. Area-wide facilities, which brings together the senior center, the library, and the cemetery. This police bond, this very specifically goes, you'll remember your budget discussion about rape kits and the backlog. And so, you know, the municipality got a grant from the state to clear their backlog, and we're going to ask the voters to give us $3.5 million to expand our crime lab so that there will be no more backlog in the future. And then fire has its separate piece as well. And this stuff is driven by bond council delineating that, you know, for separate areas you need to have separate.
Okay.
Questions?
Yeah, I'd probably end up with a question on the radio thing and crime lab, but this is not the time. I can deal with that offline.
Okay.
So bond council says we couldn't do one massive $55 million bond?
No,
Right.
Why not?
because there's subject matter approvals. The school district can, because it's all infrastructure improvements for schools only. We have to separate them because that's how they're approved.
Correct.
That's it.
It's driven by, I believe it's with the discussion, because we had quite an extensive discussion. The idea is what you want to have is you can't lump everything together, so you might put some popular things together with some unpopular things, and a person would
Sure,
be...
that's what he's thinking.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
And Mr. Gates may have an answer.
Is that state
If
law,
I may, I
federal
think
law?
there's also a complicated legal issue combining them because many of these bonds are specific to a service area and bond payments will be first from taxpayers within the service area, so we're area wide, and then a bunch of them are just service area specific, acreage roads and drainage service area. You really doesn't pay for those who don't want to combine those with an area wide public safety.
We all speculate as Josie to say, I think that's the real answer, is that the service areas have to authorize their own project.
Okay, so beyond the service area, is there a, you can't put apples and oranges on a big fruit farm?
There is some debate about that.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Smith?
So you're going to talk about this more at the meeting next week and hopefully approve them. Then the ballots will be prepared. There'll be an election on April 2nd. Questions?
Questions? Yeah, Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Secretary, every year when bond discussions get started, there seems to be quite a bit of public perception that bonds shouldn't fund operational costs. And just so I'm clear, in the past, and I know there was an issue at one point with funding the driver for an ambulance. That one didn't pass, and subsequent bond passed for just the ambulance. But we do include some operational costs that are tied directly to the project in the bond. Do we also include operational, like maintenance costs to maintain? I see Ona shaking her head yes.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean,
It varies by project, and again, it's and we're including it again where bond counsel is advising us that it is allowable.
and my understanding too is if a project is done and completed and there are leftover funds, like a road project or something, then the next project on the SIP, those funds can be directed to funding that project, even though that project may not have been specifically listed on the ballot. That's still a legitimate use of those funds.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Mr. Hansen might be able to specifically address that.
I think that's accurate.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Dice?
Yeah, so occasionally I have really good ideas. And one of them was that state crime lab with a Taj Mahal that was never should have been built and was way underutilized. And when I raised that issue a couple, 3 months ago, Chief Dahl said, yeah, we're gonna look at that. And then he came back, and my memory is he said, the state has subleased that excess space they have to other clients, if you will. And so our using that Taj Mahal space for our needs isn't practical. We have a new administration in the state, and I'd like to be able to say that we circled back and said, yeah, the chief's analysis was accurate. It's a good idea, but impossible to get there. And I would think if I was the state, that having a perfect, reliable client like us with very, very complementary needs and so on and so forth, the state might say, yeah, darn it, you're right. You all co-locating and all using the same lab sure makes a lot more sense than whoever these other occupants we have in there. And so state says, yeah, let's make it work, whatever it takes. If we've got long-term leases, we can buy them out or wait them out or whatever and save a few $1 million and maybe have efficiency of scale. Anyways, seems to me we ought to have that discussion to make sure that seems to be rational possibility is impossible. And me bringing that up at this time is it's kind of throwing a wrench in the work, and the train's about to leave the station here. But for my own peace of mind and maybe just being responsible, we ought to have had the very pointed discussions at whatever level. Sorry, I've communicated what I want.
Well, yeah, so anyone from the administration, I don't see Chief Dahl anymore. Is there space available, and would it be useful for APD?
Through the chair to Mr. Dyson, we can deliver that message to Chief Dahl and ask him to connect again with the new commissioner of DPS and have that conversation. I know that he is in conversations with them about other work that they're doing together, so
Yeah.
we can definitely circle back on that. It won't affect this bond being on the ballot as long as the assembly passes it, but if for some reason there is some collaboration allowed, then this money would just never have to be released.
So
Yeah.
maybe the train hasn't completely left the station. If
Yeah.
they say,
But, yeah, so, I mean, I'm a fan of this chief. I think he was right when he said, yeah, there's lots of really high-quality space there that is available. It'd be very difficult to figure out why that wouldn't work out really well. The fly in the ointment is that that extra space is being utilized by others.
yeah.
You know, and so on. I don't like the idea, I mean, I appreciate that, of us going out there and asking the voters to approve this, you know, knowing that a far better solution may be possible. We kind of owe it to them to say, we've explored all the possibilities. What we're putting before you is the best thing we know. But anyways, please.
It sounds like we have explored it. We could re-explore it, but it has been at least preliminary. On Ms. LaFrance's question, I was looking at the O&M is listed on the right of each of these. It's usually a much smaller number. I'm having trouble, and maybe Jerry or Ona can help me, on getting the consistency of that. That is, why is there there are some projects where O&M is on and many that they're not? What's the rhyme or reason to it?
Mr. Chair, I could begin with that. It's really less of a function of bond law and more of a function of the tax cap. And I think the short version is the authors of the tax cap realize there are some things that you're going to bond for that are just replacing stuff you currently have. It doesn't cost any more to operate or maintain than what it used to cost you. But there's some stuff that you're building that is a brand new thing. If you're going to build a new library, you're going to need librarians to staff the library. And so we take a look at that every year. What are we proposing to voters? Does it actually cause a new O&M increment? And if it does, we say you're authorizing us to build the thing, and you're also authorizing us to operate and maintain it. But if it doesn't cost new O&M, then it doesn't result.
Got it. So, for example, on the first one, 219.1, Anchorage area-wide radio network infrastructure upgrade has about 6,000 of operational. Nothing else does. So replacing an ambulance, we had the ambulance, we're going to have the ambulance, we're going to have the same people there. It's not going to have an operational impact. Okay. Is that what you were coming up to answer?
Yes.
Yeah. Did we get it right?
When we do a new road, there's maintenance after the new road, like the 100th Avenue. There'll be cost for maintenance and operations to maintain the road. That's built into the M&O increment. So same thing when we build a new fire station or any new building is to pay the utilities and the cost to maintain the facility.
So new, and then a lot of the replacements don't have one because you had one and now you're having a new one. Ms. Wimhoff, anybody else on this?
Yeah, I actually wanted to tie into both Mr. Dyson and Ms. LaFrance. I really appreciate Mr. Dyson bringing up that idea. It's a great idea. I totally agree with that concept. What I'm looking at is the question that Ms. LaFrance had about operating, and I do recall the ambulance and then attaching the drivers, and it actually might have killed the vote on that because people were upset that thinking something had been slipped in on that issue. And so when I hear about the expansion to avoid any other rate kit backup issues, I don't want that to lose because someone doesn't understand what that's for. Is that an expansion of employees? Is it an expansion of equipment, of space, or just the program and whatever comes under it?
Through the chair, it's an expansion of equipment and space.
Okay, thank you.
And it didn't have any O&M on it, though.
Okay.
APD, Elmore facility evidence, crime lab remodel. has 3.5 million, but none of it is O&M.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, a little bit slow on catching up on my reading.
Oh, so I was checking that I had it right.
Thank you.
Other questions on the bonds?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Dyson.
I'm sorry, this is kind of a little bit fascinating here. So I think what Gretchen's talking about is voters out there thinking these guys are sneaking more operating costs into the budget under the, flying under the flag of it's a voter approved. And we think of bonds as for facilities, real property, and equipment. And so that's kind of intriguing, but Mr. Folsey's argument is, I think, that the voters are approving that we do more of something than we were doing before. And so they are de facto saying, yep, we want more of this, and we're approving it. So it is a legitimate expansion of the operating budget within the framework of the tax cap.
Fred, you're lucky Amy's not here.
Sorry?
You're lucky Amy's not here. She wouldn't like that description.
I
Well-
was actually channeling her, I think.
Well, I think you're right the way you said it there, and I see it that if we're it's a truth in budgeting to me. I want to see on the how much this thing we're going to build costs and how much it's going to cost in additional to run it, and I want to make that decision on both. And if we're going to have a library and we can't afford the librarians, I don't want to build a library. So I'd like you to put it in all as one package so I can look at it and say yes or no.
Yeah, and what's troubling me is I think that I certainly understood that the tax cap says voter-approved projects. Yeah, but here, and so then there should be, except for startup costs, no operating and maintenance, thing. But once we're saying now, I think Bill is saying, the voters approved doing more of something. We got more ambulances, a bigger library, a bigger radio network.
Let's ask him and quit telling him what he's thinking. So what is the authority for us putting, is it in the charter that we can put up additional operating in it?
Yes, my understanding is that it comes directly from the tax cap, so 1403 has exceptions, and one of them is special services authorized by the voters. And so
Services, he said projects and was hanging on that.
These are services, right? O&M is not a capitalizable cost, so you're saying, do you want to build 100th Avenue at a cost of $3 million? Yes or no? We'll borrow that money, it'll be real debt. By the way, now you have to plow another road that didn't exist before, and that means we need more operating dollars. Are you okay with raising the tax cap 30 cents per $100,000 of assessed valuation? And if you look at all the bond props, about a third of them every year say, may we borrow and issue debt for $30 million for the arts of bond, and may we adjust the tax cap by 25 cents per $100,000.
For the operating of it.
For the operating.
Right. And
For the
I think he's right, but that's not what I had thought about ignorantly.
Senator Falsey's always right. Mr. Gates.
I was just going to mention that Mr. Falsey was describing each proposition language that were in the ordinances. It's not in the handouts we have. We'll describe those. If you compare the fire service area bond, ballot proposition language, and the road service road and storm drainage bonds language, that has two parts: the bond debt plus the increase in operating maintenance costs authorization, increasing the tax cap. Fire service area has no O&M operations and maintenance cost increase. So if you could see in bond prop language how that's distinguished and made clear to the voters.
And then, is that a choice, Mr. Falsey, in the sense you could say, I want to build a library and I'll just figure out how to do librarians under the cap, and so here's a $30 million library, or I want to do them both together and I want you to vote on a $30 million library plus increasing the tax cap to pay for the librarians. We could do it either way?
The answer is yes, and you could do it a third way. You could not ask to borrow any money and just ask for a bigger budget too.
Hey.
You could just say, may we increase the tax cap by $50 million? all of these things are possibilities.
Okay, and okay, so it's put together in these with the associated incremental operating expenses. Did that raise any issues for people? Do any members have amendments they're going to propose on Tuesday? Obviously, you can propose an amendment at any time. You don't have to, but to the extent we can, I'd like to get those at least discussed out front. Mr. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dunbar and I have got an amendment for over $30,000 to put a couple streetlights up in Standish Park in East Anchorage. We've been getting complaints about it being dark and drug deals taking place there. One of the neighbors was shot when a drug deal went bad, and she was sitting at home watching TV. Bullets came through the wall and it struck her, and luckily she survived. But she's been in contact with Mr. Dunbar and I, and she would like to see more lighting in that park so that it's not the old Cape Corral on a regular basis.
There you go. Okay, we see that is the one that takes it. So the two amendments are being handed out. That adds the 32,700,000. Now it's 32,730,000. And then Ms. Quinn Davidson and I have been meeting. She's been doing a lot more of the legwork, but with residents in Sand Lake area, Tisha Circle, that had drainage issues for a long time, and then in the earthquake, I think every home, but almost in that whole circle was badly damaged. Now they have soil issues from the developer who wasn't very ethical. And Mr. Fosler, were you saying that he actually spent some time in jail?
That is my understanding.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so they have soil issues, but it has not been helped by the lack of drainage on this circle. There's some discrepancy between the engineers on what its impact was in making their earthquake damage much greater. So
Alex, could you actually, they look so much like the streets that he presented as examples. I think it was Pleasant Valley or Campbell Woods or something. Anyway, those photos are exactly the same.
Anyway, we're offering an amendment for design money to address that drainage problem. And obviously not to fix the soil issues for the homeowners. That's something they'll have to fix. But to the extent it lack of drainage contributed, we'll start to look at that, hopefully.
Can I just add something?
Of course.
Austin Clemson, which is that the owners are all in the process of deciding what to do with their homes, and so they have to make a decision whether they want to invest the $50,000 to $100,000, maybe it depends on the home, to fix the foundation. But if drainage is still an issue, and this could happen again, if drainage is related, and we think it could be, they don't want to make that investment. So then we're going to have a whole circle which is abandoned, not to mention a lot of individuals impacted.
So we'll be presenting that amendment for your consideration on Tuesday. Any other amendments?
Mr. Chair, what was the amount of that amendment?
$500,000 of design. They estimate the whole project will be about $3 million, I think, including design. Or is it 3.5? Okay, so $500,000 of design and eventual $3 million, but we're just putting the design money.
So I have been asked by one of my neighborhoods to put forward an amendment asking for roughly $30,000 for additional signage to complete a project that's been ongoing for 3 or 4 years. So I have yet to decide exactly how I would put that together, but you may see it.
Okay. As I said, anyone can offer an amendment anytime, do it on the fly, but to the extent you can do it ahead of time, it makes it easier. Yeah, Mr.
I don't know about yours, so who's going to pay for this? Is it?
Well, yeah, the proposal is that we do
we being the city of
we being the city, do that drainage issue that has been there for some time and isn't on our city street, but not that we replace their soils on their property. To the extent that lack of drainage in that tight circle allowed for more liquefaction in this.
I'm just trying to think, Gretchen and I, we're in a separate frozen drainage area, and so our constituents may not be on the hook for that. portion.
Right.
But, all right.
Halsey wants in.
Mr. Falsey, sorry.
If I can loop back to Assemblymember Peterson and Dunbar, I haven't seen the Standish Street amendment previously, but it will be very helpful for us to know where the proposed streetlights are going to go. If they're on the street in the right of way, it would go in the arts bond. If they're in the park, it should go in the parks bond. So we'll need to nail that down to know what form of it.
Good, okay, you'll get that to him, or do you know?
I don't know, and would we have to contact the electric company so they, I've never put up streetlights, so I don't know exactly.
What we'd have to know is whether you want to light the park or the right of way, because if they're on park property, then it would go in the park bond. If they're in the right of way, they go in the road bond.
And if you want them in the park and you put the money in the road bond, you couldn't spend it on those streetlights because it's not in the right of way. So it's you'd have to know where it's going to have to go.
All right.
Maybe you can point to where you want, and they can tell you whether it's right away or park. Mr. Gates?
Yes, thank you. I spoke with Mr. Dunbar about this proposed amendment, whether it should be on the outside roads and bond or the parks bond, and he was sort of unsure, so he told me to put it on the roads bond, so the lights be next to the park, hopefully on the road side next to the park, not the other side. But I guess he and Mr. Peterson probably open to what Mr. Hanson and Mr. Wada think about where they should be. And maybe move this amendment to the parks bond. That seems pretty good. So,
Do you know, Mr. Rada, anything about this? Do you know where?
I know that the issue came up recently during the circumstances.
Come on up so people can hear you and the recording can hear you.
I heard about the issue when the circumstances Pete just described with an errant shooter
Yeah.
shot, but nobody defined exactly where the lights appropriately should be placed. So at this point, it was Standish Park, Fifth, Muldoon, somewhere in the proximity, but no specific location for the lights.
Okay, Mr. Peterson, you work on that for Tuesday, getting us that we're in the right bond?
We'll figure out which bond it should go in before that.
Great.
I'll go by there when I head out today. I'll
Okay.
go by and just try and get a visual.
Mr. Falsey, and then did you want back in, Mr. Gates?
no.
Okay, Mr. Falsey.
Moving all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, this is the type of one where we would probably recommend adding an M&O increment. These are streetlights that don't exist. When we create them, we'll have a new utility bill. It won't be much, but it might be, and we increase the maintenance and operations portion of the tax cap by 0.2 cents or something per $100. So if you were amenable, we could propose what we think it would cost to actually run two streetlights.
Not replacing streetlights, you're adding new ones, so it has a small increment of additional expense. Got it? Yeah, Mr. France.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick follow-up question to Mr. Falsey.
Mr. Falsey and Mr. Gates.
So just so I have it correctly, if the voters would agree to, for example, increase the maintenance and operations tax cap to cover that new cost, would that be added on forever? Or is it only then for a certain amount of time related to the capital portion of the bond being paid back?
Through the chair, it is forever. That's the way it's been since 1984.
Thanks.
Others that I missed? Hard to tell. Anyone? So do we still have Mr. Constant and Mr. Weddleton?
Yeah, I made my comment, thank you.
I couldn't tell at the beginning whether Mr. Weddleton was there or not. Doesn't sound like it, but thank you, Mr. Constant. We have a representative from the school district? Yeah, remind me your name, sir. Come on up.
My name is Tom Benesek. I'm the Senior Director for Capital Planning and Construction.
Thank you for speaking up. I talked to you briefly before, so you don't have a presentation per se. Tell us about the $4 million addition, though. What's that for?
The additional $4 million would be for the Eagle River and Chugiak area schools that were affected by the earthquake. That would go towards their recovery and repair.
Greening's shut down. Is it enough to get that back on? And what else does it do?
Both Greening and Eagle River Elementary are shut down. They will be shut down through next academic year. That is because they're going to require an engineered solution, so a design and construction.
Okay, so we're in 1819. You're saying they're going to be down through 1920. That is not until summer maybe of 20 back in operation.
That would be the earliest.
Earliest. And I'm coming to you, and obviously it's your area. So is this $4 million enough to get them back, or enough for you to study it? What do you know about that?
We currently have 4 engineering firms study 15 schools. Those include most of the ones in the Eagle River, Chuviac area. They're doing a project analysis report, which looks at 4 different conditions. The first condition being, what are the repairs just to return it to pre-earthquake level?
Yeah.
The second condition being, what is the cost to return it to pre-earthquake level, plus any additional code program deficiencies associated with that. Third, it looks at total replacement cost, and then the fourth looks at, okay, what would be the cost to just demolish it and leave the site for later rebuilding.
So is the answer to my question, the $4 million just gets you an overall study, or does it get you some things, or you just don't know yet what it would get you?
We don't know yet. We've met with our designers and the engineering firms as preliminary ideas for Eagle River and greening, where they were able to tell us, hey, this is going to require an engineered solution. It's not going to be available for the 1920 school year.
Okay. Mr. Dyson, I'm sorry.
Yeah. My question's not valid this time.
Well, good.
Mr. Chair.
We don't want to set a precedent of that stopping people from asking questions just because it's not valid. Ms. Wimhoff, do you have a valid question?
I'm gonna help Mr. Dyson out.
Oh, good, okay.
Because I know that's what he was saying. I have one question and then one comment from listening to school board presidents speak to some of the area school councils, community councils. Question on the $4 million says Chuviac and Eagle River area schools. I believe I'm correct, but that does not simply mean the 2 schools that are not working right now, but other schools have some additional repairs that they're still, for instance, Chuviac High School is not totally up to par yet. Am I correct? That $4 million is it's stretched around more than just those 2. Okay. And then the other comment was, I do recall that the school board president had mentioned that when it's time to make these decisions, that they will also bring the community in on advice as to how they feel that some of these decisions should be made, whether to rebuild, relocate, whatever we do. So I think that having clarification about that $4 million could be, I would support this amendment because I do believe that that the schools right now are operating in actually pretty impressive standards the way they do out there. Chuviac High School operated way over 2,000 for a long time, modifying how they taught, how they used their rooms, how they did their lunches, until we could get Eagle River, and now they're being asked, many schools are being asked to do that again with combined staffs. So I think that that area certainly deserves to have this money out there to help solve some of the problems.
Yeah, and we won't have it in the form of amendment, but we'll have that choice. We'll have both versions. We have the original, and then we did the other. So we'll have, my plan was to not offer, that's the revised school district proposal, so to not offer the original and to offer the $4 million more, but we'll have both before us, so either could be grabbed and moved and voted on.
Would that mean, and this is just for clarification,
Yeah.
as someone who's kind of new here, so would that mean that one could be put up and voted down for the second, or only offer one? Or
We
one
as a
for both?
legislative body are only going to put one school bond before the people. We can pick whether we want the original one or the $4 million higher one.
Okay, and they're both on the agenda?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. And we did that intentionally when this amendment came somewhat late. We could have gotten rid of or voted down the other, but sort of in case they made some errors or whatever, we wanted to have two vehicles and leave that particular vehicle. It looks like it was written right, but sometimes bond counsel comes in late. Anyway, so we have the ability to do this. Mr. Constant, did you want in?
Yep, thank you. My question to the school board or school district gentlemen isn't specifically on the bond, but in the spring or in the fall last year we had a fire at Mountain View, and I was just wondering if you had an update on the repair for the playground at the Mountain View Elementary School.
I do not. I know our maintenance department handles our grounds, and unfortunately I do not have an update on that.
Yeah, no, it was a money issue, so thank you. I'll find out later. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and if you just have them send to Mr. Constant, whatever update on that amount. Mr. Train.
Thank you. Star and I worked on this additional increase to $9 million. We went to bond council on it with the school board's approval. So it does meet bond council requirements for that money to go. We want to make sure we clear that box. And the school district, at their meeting, I attended their meeting, the question came up, if they get FEMA money, can they pay this $4 million back? And the answer was yes, they would try and pay that back first. But we have no assurance we're going to get FEMA money. The program right now is kind of upside down where they're spending their money. So we've got to get it to the voters here because we know the state doesn't reimburse any of this. So it's up to the voters. So $59 million goes forward. Will be approved by all the voters, the whole $59 million. And Eric's right in one thing is we've got both of them in front of us. It's up to us which one we decide we want to send the public. My goal is going to be to send the $59 million because that part of Anchorage was destroyed tremendously by the earthquake.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Constant.
Thank you. That raises a pretty important question. So the question being, should FEMA decide to fund a bunch of this stuff and the school district finds itself with $5 million of surplus funds, what's the mechanism for early payback?
Who's qualified? Oh, Mr. Trainee, and then...
Just at the meeting, that question came up, and the school board said they would send that money to the state to pay back this additional $4 million.
Are you on that, Mr. Slivka?
But that's to the state. If we're paying this bond money, then that doesn't make sense.
No. He says if the FEMA money, which is channeled through the state, comes to the district to pay it back $4 million or whatever amount that we were going to bond or did bond for, then what happens, Mr. Slivka?
So, through the chair, two items. One, public assistance, which is schools and municipal facilities, will get reimbursed. The threshold for funding at the federal level is $1.5 million. Once you pass that threshold, you do get reimbursement. The individual assistance piece is much more discretionary. They're waiting to start on the public assistance because they are hopeful that the individual assistance, which is sitting on the president's desk, will be signed shortly. Irrespective of whether we get federal assistance or not, the state is committed to providing the public assistance. So, and that money should come back to us this year. So we shouldn't be in a position that we've already borrowed this money, because what we're going to do is the voters are going to approve these bonds, but we don't just go out and immediately issue them. We only issue them when we actually have bills to pay. So there shouldn't be a scenario where we're caught with extra money.
So we if they do that on time, we say thank you for the $59 million of approval, but we're only going to ask for 55 of we're only going to really bond 55 because we got this other $4 million.
Correct.
And then secondly, can we pay it early like a mortgage? I mean, if it took a couple of years for them to pay us and we did borrow 59 and then $4 million comes from FEMA or wherever, can we say pay off that $4 million note early?
That would go to the terms of the GEO bond, and I would have to look to see. Generally, they have, I think, 10 years of call protection, so I don't think you have that level of ability.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So then what happens? Do we just sit there with $4 million of cash to spend away as we decide, or do we protect the people somehow?
I will get an answer on how that.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they know, but I mean, to the extent that it went for another project, you wouldn't have to bond $4 million the next year. But Sir, I'm sorry, what's your last name from the school district?
Fenosa.
Fenosa, okay.
Back to your original question when you asked about the 4 million, is it enough? Both propositions, the 55 million and 59 million, include language in the proposition which gives us some leeway towards the earthquake relief within the entire bond. So we do have some flexibility in using those funds towards earthquake relief. And then to the second point of that discussion, traditionally there are 5 things we can do with funds that are not spent or unsold, left over. Traditionally, we can apply it towards capital projects in the same bond year. And then with additional approval from the school board, if it goes to capital projects within other bond years, then capital projects overall. And then lastly, we cannot sell the bond because it's just authorization that we're given. So we don't have to sell the bond. Or lastly, we can reapply it towards paying down debt.
Just pay down debt with it?
Yes.
Curious, then, will you pay back maybe older debt? If you've got a 10-year protection, or if the lenders do, then you just go to a 10-year-old bond and pay that one off? Yeah?
You could probably do that.
What also comes
so that, well, go ahead, sorry.
What also comes into play with that is how much reimbursement for that particular bond year we give. So our older ones, pre-2015, which included 70 and 60% state bond debt reimbursement, those are under a different category. From 15 to 2020, we're under 0 state bond debt reimbursement.
Roger that. Did you want in, Ms. Browse, or just to not? Mr. Training?
Yeah, school district, what is the total bond indebtedness of the anchor school district right now? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, because I keep getting asked that question about the public. Would you find out and let me know? Because if we send this forward, I want to be able to tell the public that this is what the bond debt now is for the school district, but this will add another 59 million, so this will be the total number. We've got the one for the city at 412, so I just want to know exactly how much the school district's bonded for.
I do know that over the past, especially 5 years, the strategy of the school board has been to pay down that debt. So we have seen a considerable amount of debt reduced. However, our deferred requirements have increased. So,
if you could check and let us know, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
And has the school district established a standard of a bond-debted limit? That is, instead of this sort of declining deal, do they have, we only want to be some percentage of assessed value?
So what we do in our capital improvement plan, we have our bond debt, the anticipated debt retirement for that year. For the past 5 years, the guidance has been to stay under that state bond debt reimbursement level. So for 2019, it's $55 million. So our original was right at the limit for debt retirement.
But do you have an overall versus, we want to be this percentage of assessed valuation in Anchorage?
That would be a question for our finance officer.
Okay. Mr. Dyson?
And in the memo, it says 568.9 million bonds outstanding as of June 30, 2018.
There we go.
So we've got about 412 and they've got about 500. What was the exact number? 568, a little more than 5. Yeah, Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, I want to change the subject.
Okay.
Let's finish this one.
Any other questions on the school bonds? It's $59 million, people. No other questions? Okay, thank you, sir, for being here. Yeah.
So, and Eric, you pointed this out a couple of times, and it's part of your experience on the school board. We've got lots of underutilized school facilities, and we do in Eagle River, and changing school boundaries to make a better use of, a more efficient use of space is a tough mountain to climb, so on and so forth. The school board district and its superintendent are working on that issue for Eagle River. And the last I heard is Eagle River Elementary wouldn't be rebuilt as one of our oldest schools. Probably going to end up being a vacant piece of property and so on. So you all are gonna be here, you know, in the future. Think about those things. And it delighted me to see the school district use an unused shopping mall, a bargain for that, just repurposing stuff. And there's opportunities to do some good stuff on that. So we need to think about that, and we're supposed to take a longer view, you know, on it. The community's gonna get back to growing at some point, probably 3+ years out there. Second one, back to this darn crime lab. These kind of issues don't get solved within the bureaucracies. You know, it is always a tendency to don't cause problems, keep things going the way they're going, you know, and don't. It's gonna take, if it was gonna be resolved, somebody who's, with a back envelope thing said, wait a minute, for the state's crime lab purpose, only 32% of the building is being utilized for that purpose. These other tenants here don't have functions that are directly related to evidence storage and crime analysis. And the city needs more crime lab capacity. You know? And the people who are invested in the status quo that is working on some level, you know, are going to say, no, you can't do that. And it needs to people near Ethan and Dunleavy's level to say, horse manure, this makes sense, make it work, you know, to do it. But without that kind of intensity, it ain't going to happen. Darn it, that's just the way bureaucracies tend to work. Sorry, I'm preaching, but
a little bit. The overcapacity in the school system is primarily in high school and junior high. The elementary, you could move some boundaries, but it's pretty near. You don't want to be at 100, because then places that are 110 or 20, but you want to be in the 90s, and we're not really in high schools. And there's still people mad at me for proposing, and I went to Central, but you could close Central and Greening, and the Greening kids can go in the unused space to Eagle River, and the Central kids, about half of them are bussed in anyway, or drive in for special projects. So those didn't get done, but they were heavy lifts. There were a lot of pushback. Yeah. Mr. Cheney.
I just want to remind the body that Eagle River School site's owned by Cuda Native Corporation. We lease it, I think, $10 a year from the Native Corporation. So if in fact that building's not put back into what it's used for, that goes back to Cuda Native Corporation.
Is that Greening?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Greening also is from Native Corporation, but so is Eagle River Elementary School from the Cuda Native Corporation. Both sides.
The property is, they pay $10 a year, $1 a year.
Good.
Eagle River Chugac High School, same thing, it's owned by Glutna.
They've been good neighbors to this town.
Any other, whatever that was?
That was a great little moment.
Okay. More of what that was, or anything else? We have 5 minutes. Do you really want to say something, Mr. Haberman? That would be great. Do not exceed 3 minutes.
My name is Carl Haberman. Please note I was attending this meeting entirety. The comments I raised at the previous meeting are valid for this meeting. And thank you, Senator Weinbach, for responding to my concerns. Thank you very much. And just a footnote to that, again, there was a presentation here. There's no written by staff. There is no written copy here, and we need that. And please, I plead with you to move these meetings out to the SAC library so the public can video audio see what you're saying. So these items that you're addressing today are for public hearing in SAC this coming Tuesday. Thank you very much. We have 2 minutes and 14 seconds to spare. And our previous one was 1 minute and 2 seconds to spare. Okay.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Then we're adjourned to the work session.